the hologram is designed to keep you alive, and it views everything as a skill that's convertible to value. And after courage, you need humility, because it's not intended that you figure it out yourself or figure it out one time by going to going to a yoga retreat or something.
Welcome to the Be Better broadcast. Today we are joined by a very special guest. His name is Justin Foster. And for those who don't know Justin is the co-founder of Massive Change, an advisory firm dedicated to supporting business leaders who are called to use their status and brand to take on systemic change. In addition, Justin serves as a fractional CMO and a CMO coach. Along a journey that began on a cattle ranch in Eastern Oregon to now living in Austin, Texas, Justin has spent 2 decades providing unconventional and often heretical strategic coaching to leaders in every sector and industry. He is also a vocal advocate for neurodiversity, conscious masculinity, and mental health. Now, you might have heard of his business, again, Massive Change, and you're like, why does that sound familiar? Well, last month we had his business and his life partner, Virginia Lacayo, on the show to talk about Massive Change, to talk about finding your purpose, to talk about what comes next in your life. And she told me about Justin, and I was like, we got to have Justin on the show too. So that's why Justin's here today, to shed some light in some different areas that Virginia and I didn't have a chance to talk about that will help you to figure out what are your next moves. How can you create a life after the career or the life that you've already created? And how do you know what to do next? So when you take away even just one thing from this conversation with Justin, all that we ask is you share this show with just one other person who could use it as well. You're the reason the Be Better broadcast has grown to over 360 episodes and thousands of downloads, because you're the best part of the Be Better team. Without further ado, Justin, it's great to have you on the show, brother. Thanks for being here.
Great to be on. Thank you so much. That was a hell of an intro.
I appreciate it. A hell of an intro for, again, I don't know you very well, but from what I hear, an awesome guy. And you've got an awesome mission. And you correct me if I'm wrong, you help a lot of people who they have achieved the career success. They have done the things that they want to do. Like you even tell me that you were the VP of sales for a retread company for many years. So people have created the career, but they have this void. They're asking themselves, I have this career success. I've got the finances. I've got the wife, the husband, whatever it might be, but I feel like there's more than I need to do. Do you help a lot of people in that situation?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an interesting moment because that uneasiness that people have, which is kind of on a spectrum of, anxiety, depression, to just kind of feeling meh, is actually a signal. It's an invitation to go inward. There's nothing wrong in the sense of it's just your brain. Our brains are programmed, primarily with the reptilian and mammalian part of our brains to keep us alive. And so it views anxiety, our brain views anxiety and tells a story about it. And so a lot of people, they also arrive at this place all of a sudden too. So it's not just a dawning or just a sense. Sometimes it comes through the loss of a loved one. That the feeling the cold edge of grief, as or overcoming a major illness, or sometimes just a spiritual experience. Maybe a random spiritual experience, or maybe they go to Peru and sit with the plant medicine or whatever. But all of it is to get you to listen, because that's what that is. That's a message to listen to. And it's interesting. I do believe that everyone gets a message about what their life is for, but everyone's message is different about what they're here to do. And it seems to be a blend of your experiences, especially your darker experiences. I have a tattoo that says the mission is in the suffering.
Wow.
And so there's the darker experiences, your gifts, your natural gifts that you were born with, your learned skills, your academic credentials or whatever, all of that, it's all here for something bigger than yourself. So yes, we we definitely, we have a process we call Moonshot, which is basically 3 days with us in Austin, Texas, to reorganize your life, your business, everything around your purpose.
Mm. Very interesting. Okay. So this is a feeling that can come out of nowhere. It's not always a feeling that just builds up and accrues over time. It's a feeling that can create emotions of depression, emotions of anxiety. So you've got someone who's doing really well. Like a lot of people listening are
Hmm.
leaders inside of their business, and maybe they're 30, maybe they're 45. That's generally the bulk of our audience. When do you
Right.
find most people have these moments? Because you said it arrives at different times in different places, and you believe everyone has this moment. When do you notice it arrives? And does it arrive several different times in our life?
Hmm. Yeah, I think it probably arises several different times. It kind of depends if you have some sort of like shocking experience that obviously will accelerate it. Some people are just born knowing what they're here to do. That's more rare. But it seems to happen in the late 30s and the early 40s. And what I have, having coached hundreds and hundreds of people kind of through this transition to living more mission driven or more purpose driven, is what I have discovered is that if you have this uneasiness at 42 or 44, um, what will happen is you will get better and better at what you do for a living, and you won't. And then by the time you're 54, you're going to be doing the same thing, and you're still going to be miserable. And that's a shocking thing for people because we've been told, go build a skill and get paid, and that's true. We should do that, but it's only just part of the journey. It's only part of the process. Um, and what I've seen too is maybe if you miss it in your early 40s, it comes back around in your 70s.
Wow.
Sometimes with the loss of a spouse or something, and now you're by yourself, and a lot of us will spend time alone, but we don't spend time with ourselves. Those are two different
Right.
things. And so there's those, but most of the time we're working with people that are somewhere between 40 and 50 in the process. So.
Very interesting. So okay, so now I'm curious because you're speaking on this, and you come from the sales world, so do I, and I'm still in the
Mhm.
sales world. How do you go from the world of sales to speaking on this very important yet very specific topic? Like, did you have a moonshot moment? What did that look like for you?
Yeah. Well, it's, if you don't mind, a little bit of a longer story
Sure.
to go with this, because I'm 53 now, so the stories get longer. But I'll give you the main highlights. Is I grew up in a very violent home, as part of a fundamentalist Christian cult. And violence and cults rob you of who you are. You don't know who you are. And so I didn't have any counsel on going to college or anything. I was sort of on my own about figuring life out. And um, I I initially was in sales for about 10 years because I was really good at talking to people, and it turned out that I was really good at sales, but I was also a good leader. So I got promoted at two different companies to the VP of sales. But I left my corporate gig in 2003 and started a branding and marketing firm in Boise, Idaho. And my job was the rainmaker. I was not involved in brand strategy. I was, if they needed some sales coaching, I provided that. But my main job was to go get deals. Well, after several years, we found out that one of the founding partners had been stealing from the company. And so he was our primary like brand strategist. And we had this fairly major client coming in for a strategy session. And my other partners in the business didn't know how to, their roles were different too. They were tech or design or something. I'm like, I'll do this. And parallel to that, several years ago, I got to meet Andy Roddick, the tennis player, and I
Oh,
got to
cool.
talk to him about his purpose. And I said, when did you know? And he said, it was in Nebraska when I was 4 years old, and my dad put a racket in my hand, and I liked it just fit in my hand perfectly. Well, I think that was the same feeling I had in that strategy session, because the client cried and was so happy and said afterwards, I would have paid you 10 times what I paid you for this. And so that was the first moment really where I'm like, wait a minute, there's something inside of me that it can read people, what I now call strategic intuition. Fast forward to 2014, I had a spiritual awakening, which is its own story. It was it happened all of a sudden. It was an unraveling that burst open, more like a dawning, and then the sun broke through. Um, and I began to reorganize my life around it. Um, and I did that for a while, but I still had this feeling that I was supposed to do something more. And then there were kind of two bookend events in history besides COVID, but 2020 had two kind of bookend events. One was the murder of George Floyd, and
Mm.
that profoundly impacted me as a what I call a SWAM, a straight white American male. And then on the back end of that, in January 6, 2021, the violent insurrection in the Capitol, and that profoundly affected me as an American. And I just was like, fuck this. I'm not going to, no longer will I do brand strategy and messaging and stuff for brands that don't have an impact on humanity, that aren't somehow contributing to to addressing the problems that we're having, because the institutions that we currently have, they created most of these problems and they benefit from the perpetuation of them, like the two-party system as an example.
Sure.
Or institutional religion or institutional academia. They all benefit from conflict and separation. And in December of 2020, I also met Virginia and fell in love in 15 seconds, probably. The most remarkable human being I've ever met.
She is
And
a great person.
she really, as an immigrant and a Latina and a lifelong feminist and an activist from Central America, really opened my eyes to systemic injustice. I didn't really understand systemic injustice. And then it all kind of came together and Massive was born in August of 2022.
It's amazing how all these, I mean, starting from your childhood, growing up in the Christian cult and learning how to talk to people. And I can only imagine that you became great at talking to people through observation, through having to know how to talk to people, having to be able to read body language, especially in a violent environment. And that led you into sales. And from there, it led you into consultations, which then helped you to realize what your gift was, right? Helping people, coaching people, guiding people. And when that person said to you, I would have paid 10 times this amount, you were conscious in that moment, because I know there's a lot of people listening, including myself in the past, where people would say, wow, you're really good at this. And then you'd hear that all the time. And you have an option in that moment to hear it and receive it and ask yourself, I'm having a lot of people tell me that I'm really good at this one thing. What can I do with this thing to create an even larger impact in the world? But I can imagine that people hear that and not tuned to hear that, and it just goes right over their head. They don't think about it. And then those emotions of disparity and those emotions of depression come up, and they're like, I don't know why I feel this way. Well, it's because we're not listening to that inner voice. We're not listening to those people who are giving us an outside perspective on what it is we're great at and what we can and should do.
Right. That's why people talk about imposter syndrome. And the reason we have imposter syndrome is that we're imposters. That's why it's there. It's not insecurity as much as it is a separation from that voice inside. And it's what I call the hologram. And we all humans do this. It's part of the neocortex. We build kind of who we need to be to make it in the world. But that's not really who we are. And then a lot of our structures, from consumerism again to religion and politics, they kind of keep us separate from ourselves by design. And so what's shocking for people is to realize that what other people were seeing for years was true. That they're like in a positive way. Like somebody would say you have an amazing gift at critical thinking or pattern recognition or design or linguistics or whatever, but the hologram is designed to keep you alive, and it views everything as a skill that's convertible to value. And one of the worst things that can happen to people, especially in the United States, there's two terrible things, two curses. One is is to become excellent at something that doesn't feed your soul. The second
Mm.
is to have enough money to buy perpetual or new coping mechanisms. If we were to swap out all of the behavior that we see that's sort of unhealthy, let's say, and again, I'm not a Puritan in any way, but my point is a lot of the things that we're doing to sort of function in the world where we're time bound, task bound, project, like deadline bound, KPI bound, all of that stuff. Again, those that to themselves are not unimportant, but they're not the point. They're just information about where you're at in the journey, where you're at in the process.
Okay, so if one of the curses is the ability to buy anything that could steal your time and steal your focus and just create pleasure. So I've got unlimited resources. I'll buy the best computer, the best TVs, the cars. I'll buy the drugs, the women, the whatever it is, right? How do you avoid the traps? Like, especially, I know you work with very successful people who do have the ability to buy whatever it is they want. How do you avoid the traps and the distractions when the pleasure can be greater than the pleasure in putting in the hard work to achieve your moonshot?
Well, that's because consciousness unto itself, the middle of the spectrum of consciousness, according to David Hawkins, is courage. If you look at David Hawkins, who's a psychologist that studied sort of intellectual consciousness, if you will, not necessarily spiritual consciousness or social consciousness. And he pointed out or really mapped out that courage is in the middle, and below that is a lot of stuff that we would consider to be sort of advanced survival skills. And people can check out the David Hawkins map of consciousness and see. So the first thing is you need courage. You need courage. That's it. And what's the courage for? Well, to question everything, to question your thoughts, your emotions, to question your social conditioning, to question your intentions. You need courage to do that. You need courage to go inward. You need courage to stop. That's the other thing that we're especially successful people are sort of addicted to busy, and it takes courage to stop. And after courage, you need humility, because it's not intended that you figure it out yourself or figure it out one time by going to a yoga retreat or something. And then the final thought here is, if we trace it back even further, these coping mechanisms for most successful people are not just about affluenza, not just about this uneasiness. The coping mechanisms are often there as dysregulation of unintegrated trauma. And so what's one of our rules is, if you are not actively in therapy, we do not coach you.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you have to be actively in therapy, or we will not coach you. And it could be talk therapy, it could be trauma-informed therapy, whatever. It doesn't matter, because when you do trauma integration work and you do shadow work and you do that deep work, you find out who you are. And when you find out who you are, you answer the two fundamental questions of life: who am I and what do I want? And then the third question emerges, which is, what am I here to do? And so once you know that, it doesn't mean that you don't experience pleasure. This isn't about being, a monk in a cave. It just means that your priorities change. And we love the theory that our behaviors are a reflection of our values. And that's a nice theory, but actually they're a reflection of our priorities. But when you elevate your consciousness, your priorities change, because your vision changes. You see reality, you see the actual value of things. So we use terms like grounded. Somebody will say they're very grounded, or they feel comfortable in their own skin. And it's pretty rare with rich people to meet people that are truly grounded, truly humble. But they need to be softened by life. They can't come to us as like stiff leather. They got to be beat up a little bit, and realize and have the humility to ask for help.
Some of the people that I've met that are the least happy are either not busy at all, or they're not challenged, or usually it's both. People who I find are the unhappiest and they're not happy with how their life are going, they don't really have anything they're working towards, and nothing is really pushing them to their limits. So when you say, this idea of being busy isn't good, is that being busy towards the wrong things before you do the inner work, being busy on the things that aren't bringing you this level of purpose?
It's more neurological or neurochemical, actually, for me. It's more of an addiction to busyness. So it's not busyness isn't the issue. Like, having good bourbon every once in a while is fine, but if you need it to cope in life, then you got a problem. And that's the thing with busyness is often used as an excuse to not go inward. I don't have time. I don't have time to meditate. Bullshit. You need 30 seconds to start off with, and um and so when you break the addiction to busyness, you realize that really it's about what I call the three S's: stillness, solitude, and silence. It's there that you can hear your soul. And I think that's what most people are terrified of hearing their soul, because very often it's like the saying, the truth will set you free, but first it will fuck you up, and it will. And there's a huge threat to that. That's why so many people that have awakenings end up divorced or changing careers, because they realize that this is not who they are. And that's terrifying for people, especially when you have sort of this ego driven, and I don't mean ego like inflated, bloviating. I mean ego like the part of our brain that wants to keep us alive. This, that where the ego feels safe, but the soul feels sad. That's why I don't really focus on happiness. Happiness is a fickle mistress, and it can be very conditional. Um, we focus on purpose,
Hmm.
and joy, and being able to label your feelings, to feel all of your feelings all the way through. You feel grief, you feel anger, and really getting down to the core feelings, the 7 or 8 core feelings, and understanding those, and understanding that each of them are a signal. They're evolutionary signals to change something, to move. That's what they're there for. They're not things to numb or things to avoid or things to suppress. They are messages, and so when you listen to that, you can get to a place of contentment. And I think that's what people really want when they talk about, the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is actually, I think, life, liberty, and the pursuit of contentment. And
Interesting.
contentment is where your inner world and your outer world are in harmony. I think that's what contentment is. And when one of those is out of balance, which for most people in the United States in particular, it's way out of balance to their external world. That's the hologram. But even some people get so zen they become worthless. They don't do anything. They disappear from society and nothing changes.
Yeah.
So you can over-index the other way too by being quote unquote too spiritual.
So you believe there's a balance between being quote unquote zen and using that emotional state that you're in to do good towards a greater purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. There's actually a modality of therapy called dialectic behavior therapy, which blends mindfulness with cognitive behavior therapy. And it's basically blending those two things. It's blending mindfulness, which is the practice of sort of mental or intellectual consciousness, with behavior change. And that's why I say self-love begins with choice. It begins with choosing the mindset you're going to have. And I know, Virginia is the way more of an expert on mindset than I am. And then choosing your behavior. And then when your mindset and your behavior are directed by your purpose, it simplifies life. It
Hmm.
makes it sort of functionally, um, dualistic. Often dualism is not necessarily a good thing, but in this case, it's like, does this direct me towards my mission or my purpose, or does it not? Does it take away? And if we just trust the process of taking the steps forward to our purpose, don't be an idiot, don't be foolish, don't quit your job today, but take steps towards making your purpose real. It will reveal itself. It's one of our deep convictions, especially when we do the Moonshot experiences. You absolutely can monetize your mission in an ethical, sustainable way.
Yeah.
No one's mission is necessarily designed that you got to be poor and desolate. Um, there is a way to do it. There is a way to build a movement that you can monetize your calling, your purpose, your mission, whatever you want to refer to it as.
What's up, Be Better family? It's Brandon Eastman here. And as a thank you for tuning in to the Be Better broadcast, I want to give you a very special gift. For a limited time, you can get a free digital copy of my book titled Be Extraordinary, Your Guide to Self-Mastery. This book is packed with insights and actionable steps that will help you to unlock your fullest potential in the 5 key areas of your life. But that's not all. Along with the book, I also want to give you the audiobook version absolutely free. Imagine having the power to transform your life right at your fingertips and in your ears anytime, anywhere. Go grab your copy at bebetterindustries.com/book. You'll also find the link in the episode show notes. Go and grab your copy and join me in making a positive impact on the world. Now back to the show. That's beautiful. I love that. So what I really love that you just said is you have to choose your mindset and then you have to choose your behavior. So Can you give me an example? I know you said Virginia's the expert on mindset, but you spend a lot of time with her, so I know that you know your stuff too.
Yeah.
Give me an example of some mindsets that you'd want to choose and maybe a couple that you'd want to avoid. If you have to choose your mindset, then what are you generally looking for? Is it different for everyone?
Yeah, it's different for everyone, but the process is sort of the same. And I think, first of all, we have to stop trying to choose our emotions. We really can't, especially our core emotions. If we're angry, just be angry. It's okay. Just watch your behavior. If you're full of, passion, great, whatever, just manage your behavior. But that's not enough. Is to get to your question about choosing a mindset. So I'll give you a specific example of something, and I actually wrote about this on I have a essay, and I have a Substack community called The Third Way, where I write essays and post podcast episodes about non-dualistic ideas and business, religion, and life. I have dealt with a kind of pervasive negativity, or I would say almost like a dichotomy, where my soul is optimistic, but my mind or my psyche is negative, and which is very common for people that are childhood trauma survivors and are neurodiverse. Very common thing to feel that way. And one of the things, and I learned quite a bit of this from Virginia, and some of it from my own, digging in, some from therapy, that there's this concept of acting as if. And so you think about how you would like to behave. Like I want to wake up energetic. I want to be positive. I want to smile at people. Instead of trying to get rid of a feeling, trying to get rid of feeling depressed. Again, there is clinical depression, so I'm not diminishing that, but trying to get rid of something doesn't help you within that process, because there's always going to be some shit you got to get rid of, or you think you need to get rid of, when it's really just part of the cycle of life. So instead, when you see that, okay, I want to be a person, in my case, that's more positive. What does that look like? And it's things like, the minute I wake up, I try to decide to have a positive mindset, no matter what I'm feeling. I sometimes sleep very poorly. Again, another common trait of us neurodivergent people. But I choose that mindset. I choose to smile when I'll lay in the dark and sometimes just smile, because it sends a signal to the brain that everything's okay. And so you could take anything that, basically how you want to feel and how you want to behave, and take it back to the mindset, and then choose that mindset. Now, this isn't even really all that spiritual. It's very neurological. All you're doing is you're training your brain to provide you what you want. Because the brain has its own baseline operating system, and then it's got social conditioning, which would include trauma on top of it. And none of it's really designed to make you happy. It's designed to keep you alive, like I said. So you have to train your brain to feel joy, for example, or you have to train your brain, or at least I do, to be optimistic. And I'm building new neural pathways. This is the value of mantras, for example, or I do a 15-minute silent, unguided meditation every morning and most evenings too. All I'm doing there is I'm just being quiet, silent, stillness, solitude, and I'm building new neural pathways.
Hmm.
And that's an example.
So when you're in silence and you're with yourself for these 15 minutes, are you asking yourself questions? Are you staying aware of the thoughts that come through your mind? What does one of those silent sessions look like? Because like you said, a lot of people, including myself, we don't spend a lot of time. We spend a lot of time alone, but we don't spend a lot of time with ourselves. So what does that look like?
Right. Yeah. And some days it feels so difficult and the mind is noisy, but the first step is to not try to control anything. You're just observing. The way I tried it when I teach this kind of simple concept to people is you're like a scientist observing, let's say, some sort of ecosystem, and you're not allowed to meddle. If you're looking at an ant farm, you don't stick your finger in there, and you just observe. Um, and in that observation, then that allows you to be in the witness seat, and that's where consciousness begins. When you realize you are not your thoughts and feelings, that some part of you is observing them. It's
Hmm.
extraordinarily empowering to realize that. Anybody can do that. It's free. This is why going to like meditation retreats and paying a shit ton of money for them, I think, is stupid. It's free. It's already inside of you. Um, so the second thing that I'm doing is I'm eliminating in my thoughts. I'm building like a container, and I don't think about tasks. I don't think about the future, which is sort of tasks, because I'm thinking about what I'm going to do. I don't think about the past. I build a container so I don't ruminate. And again, trauma survivor, ADHDer, we are rumination machines. And I call it watching the game film. After athletes do. But that's not the place for that. The place there's a different time to do that. In this container, then what does that leave? Well, it leaves me feeling my feelings, and it allows me to examine, okay, what am I really feeling right now? And what does that look like to feel that all the way through, to just sort of immerse in the feeling. If it's anger or grief or joy or weariness, just feel the feeling. And then the second thing it does is then because you don't have anything left. If there's no past to look at, no future to look at, no task to look at, no time to look at, because your eyes are closed, and I set a timer so I don't stay there forever. You realize that what's left is sensorial input. And now we go back to this ancient idea that our body is far more connected to our soul than our mind. So you feel the texture of the blanket on your feet. You feel maybe the cold air on your neck, or you feel sensations. You go through all five senses, and you just are tuning into it, and you get to this place inside of yourself that's almost like this still pool. And there's a kind of serenity in that. And then you know that you can go back to that multiple times. You can go back there. And again, I'm saying it in somewhat like, oh, this is easy. No, it's not. It's some days it's easier than others, but meditation or mindfulness is like leg day in the gym. It is always hard.
No, I feel like you just brought me through a meditation because your description was fantastic. I felt like I was in a trance as you described what you do, what it does, all that. So that was really good. I like
Yeah.
that. So you take 15 minutes a day and you do that for yourself.
Usually 15 minutes in the morning early. I get up usually around 5:30. And I have other little rituals, like I go outside no matter the weather. I go outside and take my slippers off and stand in the grass. Um, and um, and then in the evening, I try to go sit outside for 15 minutes. And that one is the similar meditation, but I do it with my eyes open,
Okay.
without my glasses. on. And so I'm just looking at things as they are, because I'm pretty much blind without my glasses. But it's and you're sitting in the night, and you can hear the crickets, and you can hear the neighbors, and it's like it's like life is a sound bath. You don't need Tibetan bowls. I mean, I like Tibetan bowls, but you don't need them. Life is a sound bath. Um, and it's just a matter of not trying to change anything.
Wow. Very interesting. Okay, so let's spend the rest of our time talking about someone comes to your moonshot experience. So you said it's over 3 days, and I looked at your website. Every day is a specific theme. So you've got the person who is there because they know that there's more for them to do, and they're like, I got to figure out what my calling is.
Mm-hmm.
What does it look like? Are there specific questions that you ask them? Like, what does it look like to find and discover your calling / purpose? How do you do that?
Well, one slight modification, Brandon, to that is we don't help people find their calling. We help people articulate their calling and operationalize their calling. So you have to kind of know at least a whisper of what it is. So I'll tell you the story of a recent client. He grew up in a pretty stable home. He went to Harvard. He played football. He got a good job. He's been a CEO and C-suite person. A really good, curious human, courageous, humble. And since he was I was at Harvard, he'd had this thing placed on his heart to spread openness. Well, it's like, what is that? So it was like a pet project. And a few years ago, he put together a website with these ideas that if we spread openness, we could heal division, and divisiveness in society. And he finally, after meeting us, was like, I need to do this. And that's part of the courage too, is to invest the time and the money. And that's a sign of commitment if you're going to actually do it. And so he kind of knew. But what we did is I'll put it this way, we put language to it first. It is, your mission is your brand. Your purpose is your brand. And so therefore it needs language and differentiation and design. It has all the same elements of a brand, because you want to go out and spread it in the world and, grow it, sustain it, and monetize it. So you got to treat it as a brand. And then, and this is really, and Virginia and I kind of blend these two skills, but then what she's doing also in the Moonshot is she is noticing your language, your reactions, things like that, and the way she's not as crude as I am sometimes, but we help define the language, and then she helps you understand how your mind's going to fuck it up. Like looking at your insecurities and how your ego will be like, you can't say that, or what if people are offended, and go to the negative and all the stuff the ego does. Again, it's just doing its job. It's trying to keep us alive. And so in that process, what we're doing is we have an exercise of the 5 whys. Now, this is not new. A lot of people use the 5 whys. You just keep asking why and why and why. But many people have heard of it. Most people haven't done it. That's a set of questions. But then we start to dig into things like, one of the key questions we ask is, what are you willing to commit civil disobedience to defend? Like, what would you be? I mean, this is the thing that most, especially straight white Americans, do not understand the experience of people from traditionally marginalized groups as it relates to injustice. And it's no coincidence that our examples of social change are Black and brown people mostly, rarely white people, as far as like social change. And so there's this realization of like, oh, what would I commit civil disobedience over? Which may be very natural to someone that comes from a traditionally marginalized group, like I said, people of color, immigrants, people from the queer community. They already have experienced that in many ways. And so that's a big question for people, because it plays into something that our mantra from John Lewis, the now deceased congressman, who said, get in some good trouble. And so good trouble is if you live your purpose, and especially if you're a business leader, and you're going to go off and take on some sort of systemic change. It doesn't mean necessarily like huge social issues. Maybe you're just going to try to make your industry more kind. I don't know, whatever it is, it's your calling. In that process, you're going to get in some good trouble. There will be some form of somebody saying, crucify him. They will attempt to cancel you. And that's where Virginia works with our clients on what she calls the indomable mindset. Indomable is Spanish for untamable or unable to be domesticated. You have to have a mindset that the same mindset that Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King Jr. and Gandhi and Jesus, they had this indomable mindset, which is they were sort of unfuckable with in the process because they had resilience and grit, mental grit. Because when you fight the system will fight back, regardless if the system is your family dynamic, your religion, your community, your industry, your society. It will fight back. And so those are some things. I'll give you one more, Brandon, too, that we dig into extensively is related to articulating your calling. Is what is something you've always known to be true that no one taught you? Because what we're trying to do is to show people that you have sort of an intrinsic set of values that were not social conditioning. And I've asked this question of hundreds of people, and everyone's got an answer. And most of the time, they're kind of shocked, like, "Oh, I don't know," and they sit with it, and they'll say like, "Freedom, justice, love." Like people come from very dark backgrounds, and what they've always known to be true is love. That's amazing. So there's something there that I think is the seed bed or the foundation of creating a mission that becomes a movement. It's rooted in a value or a core belief. And then our job is to convert that core belief into a type of language that you use to, operate in the world as a brand. Whether that's as an individual brand or if you're starting an organization.
Wow, there was a lot there. And one question I wanted to ask you is you spoke recently that you're in the process of retraining your brain to be more positive. And especially after a few things you said here, it made me curious to ask you. So if we are to accept our emotions, to be aware of our emotions, not try to push them away or suppress them, what is the benefit of training your brain to be more positive? What is that doing for you?
Well, I don't think it's a universal thing. I suppose, I would not impose the idea that other people should train their brain to be more positive. It's just negativity for me, I realized was like a tax I was paying on life that I didn't want to pay. I'm a libertarian in a lot of ways. And so, to quote Ron Swanson from Parks and Rec, taxation is theft. And so there's this taxation of negativity, like a residue or just like this little tinge of sometimes dark smudge, sometimes a little tinge, a little flavor that I don't want. And I realized it was affecting my sense of contentment. And so the main benefit to me is if I want to feel content, well, I'll put it this way. I don't know any content people that are negative. Not that they don't have periods of negativity. They don't go through hard shit. I'm not saying that. But every person I know that's negative is not content. So you reverse engineer that. The contentment, therefore, must mean some level of positivity. And not toxic positivity. I don't believe in that either. Or sort of unicorn farts and rainbows. I don't believe in that either, because life sucks sometimes. But life sucking and being positive are not incompatible. Actually, they're probably more compatible than we realize.
Now, earlier
everything bends towards good, is what I'm saying.
Okay, interesting. So I'm trying to understand this. So earlier you said, if you're angry, be angry, right? Because that's and my brother, and I tell him this all the time, my brother is more angrily inclined than me, but he's got a heart of gold. And that's just how we've accepted him. So how can you both embrace being angry and be positive at the same time, or do they not exist in the same plane as each other?
Well, that's a great question. Again, we want to discern feeling from behavior. And not all angry behavior is bad. If somebody is harming a family member, I would have no, I mean, I'm a gun owner. I would have no problem protecting my family. No
Yeah.
problem at all. And there is a kind of clean anger too about injustice. If you're not angry about homelessness or the systemic killing of Black people by the police department, like you pick your thing. If you're not angry about it, I'm not saying you have to be angry about it all the time, but it's a righteous anger, if you will. There's nothing wrong with that. That's good.
Okay.
I use this example. I don't like the word Christian, but I'll use it that I say I'm Jesus centric. Well, the story of him overturning the tables in the temple. He flipped the tables in the temple and said, you guys are grifters and hucksters, using the Lord's space for your own financial gain. He was describing modern American evangelicalism in
Hmm.
some ways. And so that was anger. That wasn't like he was nice about it. And I
Yeah.
think that's the other thing people think of too. Nice is rarely kind. Nice is passive aggressive, defensive
Mm.
manipulation. Nice is a form of gaslighting. Kindness has teeth sometimes.
Mm.
That's why Brene Brown says clear is kind. It has
Wow.
teeth. So all of those things are realizing just these nuances of flavors of life, and it's anger, even jealousy. There's a clean jealousy too. There's there's a there's clean versions of what we would consider to be negative feelings. And so I'm looping back to this. Anger doesn't mean necessarily negativity. Because I know the people I know that are positive and content, they get angry they get angry about all kinds of stuff. It's more that they regulate that emotion or understand that emotion, and they regulate their behavior about it.
That clears it up in a great way, especially the story of Jesus overturning the tables, and that all emotions can serve a purpose, but if we're constantly living maybe in one emotion, it could be
Mm-hmm.
detrimental, but it can be a great thing in order to use those emotions and feel those emotions and learn those things about
Right.
yourself.
Right. Emotions are evolutionary signals. At a base level, we have the same emotions as other mammals. Fear, anger, lust. Those all mammals have the same set of feelings. We have a neocortex, so we have a whole bunch of secondary feelings as well. But emotions unto themselves are not dangerous. They may be unpleasant. You may not like them, but we have a choice. We could always choose our behavior. Again, we rarely can choose our feelings.
Mm,
I don't know who said it originally, but you can't think your way out of feelings. You got to act your way out of feelings. If you don't
wow.
like the feeling, you got to act different, not think different. So, or think
Powerful.
different in the sense, not like mindset, but like you got to go do shit. That's how you change the way you feel. You don't change the way you feel by sitting and ruminating. You can't. I would say this: you cannot meditate your way out of out of the misery that your soul is producing because you are supposed to be doing something else.
Wow.
The spiritual practices are not coping mechanisms. Spiritual practices are mechanisms to go out and make change in the world.
Hmm.
That's what they're there
You
for. That's why
use
I
them
say
as
all
tools, and they are.
consciousness. Yes, right. They're tools for change. They're evolutionary. And that's why I say all levels, each level of consciousness contains within it a social justice component. And because no one's mission is to keep things the same. No one has an awakening to go like, well, I'm just going to live in my gated community and you know, drink my expensive coffee and, watch my giant flat screen. Not that those things are bad, but that's why he's saying a lot of people are using these sort of mindfulness tools and spiritual retreats and even, plant medicine, all kinds of stuff to keep the hologram alive. And that's not the point. So,
Excellent. For those who are interested in learning more about this, for people who hear about your moonshot experience and they hear about these things that we're talking about now, and they're like, this is me, this is for me, I want this. How often do you host these moonshot experiences, and do you know when the next one is?
yeah, thank you for that. So these are private experiences. They're not group experiences. They're conducted with just you in Austin. We'll find a cool place. Some clients that come from out of town, we'll find them an Airbnb that we include in their fee that they like, but that becomes the space, the container for the experience. And there's some stuff that we do that's outside, and some challenges that we help put you through. And so we schedule those typically where people arrive on a Wednesday and leave on a Sunday. So we have Thursday, Friday, Saturday as full days. And there's plenty of downtime, where you can reflect or work out, or, whatever you need to do. It's not like, there's elements of it that are kind of a grind or a heavy lift, but there's also spaciousness. So it's sort of half retreat, half strategic planning, half boot camp.
Wow.
Or not half, a third, I guess. And so, yeah, we don't have set schedules. We basically work around whatever works for you. There's a couple things we do ask is almost all of our clients are business leaders. Most of them are owners or CEOs. Is you gotta take care of your shit before you get to the immersive, to the Moonshot, because you just learn, delegate, let it go, let it stop. It's okay. So take care, make sure somebody's taking care of the kids and the bills and the payroll or whatever needs to be done in your life. And the second, and this is an interesting thing, Brandon, I don't know what the maximum time most people have spent being the center of attention. It's, unless you're a celebrity, we don't really know what that is. Maybe when we get a massage, like a 90-minute massage, we're the center of attention for 90 minutes. But how often are you the center of attention? And it's very uncomfortable. And so that's the other thing we sort of like pre-train the client to be comfortable with silence, and be comfortable, or learn at least to be sort of accepting, receptive of being the center of attention for that many days and hours. So those are kind of some of the conditional stuff that we recommend the client does. And then the last part, when you're done, we always say, don't ask people what, don't give them your mission, your message, your plan, everything. Don't ask people what they think, partially because we don't care what other people think.
Yeah.
Secondly, they will give you an opinion about something, and so just ask them, how does this make you feel? What comes up for you? Because now people are like, oh, this makes me feel like inspired, or this makes me feel like motivated, or whatever they're feeling. You're like, great. That's what we're looking for. What you're doing makes people feel, because feelings, as we said, are the motivator, not thoughts. Thoughts don't motivate. Feelings do.
Because people might not agree with your mission, but seeing that you have a mission that you're intensely passionate about can be inspiring to help them determine their own mission.
Yeah, or get involved in yours, or something along those lines. And it's also the brain, when asked for what we think, is predisposed to finding a problem often. There's like, well, I feel like I have to come up with something, here to criticize this in some way, That's why you get the other thing you get that's useless when you ask people what they think is, I think it's great. It
doesn't help at all.
There's no information there.
Yeah, it's true. Awesome. This has been really great, Justin. So where's the best place for people to connect with you? I know that you're present on LinkedIn, very present. You mentioned you have your Substack community that I didn't know about. Mm-hmm. So we're going to include those in the description. Where's the best place for people to reach out to you should a Moonshot experience be something they're interested in?
Yeah, it's sort of the usual. You can go to our website, massivechange.co, and fill out the contact form, and I'll be in touch to book a call with you. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me on Instagram, at Foster Thinking on Instagram. And those are the best ways. And just send me a message saying you heard me on the Be Better show and you want to talk. And all conversations like that, no strings attached, no pitching. I'm not going to talk you into anything. It's more just to get to know each other and see how we vibe, and how we can be of service to you, regardless if you come and do a Moonshot. So.
Excellent. Super cool. Guys, links are in the description to go check out Justin's website, his LinkedIn, his Substack. I'll have everything down there to make it easy for you. Justin, this has been great. I'm glad we got to meet. And now, like I said before we recorded, it's a family affair. We've had you, we've had Virginia. Yeah. It's eventually it'd be really great to do a 3-person conversation with both of you.
Whenever you're,
really fun.
Yeah.
Cool.
And you can even expand my older sons, the ones I made, they're amazing dudes, like some of the most beautiful, conscious men I know, and they have amazing partners. So um,
Awesome.
anyway, I'm only half joking, but they're very interesting people.
I'll have to
I
connect with them.
love. Just want to say, I want to say this before we go, Brandon. I love the way you do this. I listened to a couple of episodes before, and you have a sincerity about you that's often missing in these, and a realness, and you ask great questions. And so I just want to, as one podcaster to another, just give you a digital high five and for being just a cool dude.
Wow. Thank you very much, brother. I received that. It means a lot. And again, it was great meeting you. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for being on the mission that you're on, because it's helping a lot of people. And I look forward to our next conversation, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, Brandon.
This has been a very interesting conversation because we went in a lot of different directions. We covered a lot of ground. This has been 55 minutes, but it feels like I've been talking to Justin for several hours. This time flew by. I mean, we talked about going inward. We talked about listening to yourself. And really, personally, if I take anything away from this conversation, it's what Justin said. We often spend time alone, but we're not spending time with ourselves. And I have an idea, a pretty good idea of what my mission is and what brings me joy, but maybe not joy, more so contentment. But I rarely spend time with myself. And a lot of those questions I asked were selfish questions, but I know that they can help you as well. If you are someone who's looking for your mission, if you're someone who's looking for, even though he said not to use this word, your calling, if you're someone who's looking for what will bring you contentment in this world. So if you're a business leader, a CEO, a high-level business leader, someone who wants to discover these things for themselves, be sure to go to the description, check out Justin's LinkedIn, his website, and his Substack, and start a conversation to see if his Moonshot experience over in Texas makes sense for you. Thank you so much for watching and listening. If you found this episode valuable, please share it with just one other person. Thank you for being the best part of the Be Better team. And until we talk again next time, continue to be better.